Prime Minister Carney, what is happening to Canada? To be honest, something feels off. Not just higher prices, not just weird headlines, it's deeper. Like the country is drifting from what made it work. Today, I want to talk about 3 warning signs that prove that this is more than just a mood swing. This is a turning point. And I think the last sign I talk about today is definitely not a blip. It's structural, it's long term, and it's going to decide Canada's future unless people step up. Remember the happy times when Canada's housing market was the global envy? That era is over. Toronto is on track for the lowest levels of housing starts in 30 years. Let that sink in. 30 years. Developers are canceling, buyers are retreating, and confidence is shot. If you can find me one person who genuinely believes that this is a soft landing, well, good on them. The data is straightforward. CMHC says condo starts in Toronto fell 60% year over year in the first half of 2025, with total starts down 44%, the lowest since 2009 or population adjusted since 1996. Record low pre-construction sales, investors fleeing, and ROI that is totally out of whack at the moment. Here's the bigger picture. Home ownership is the foundation of middle-class stability. When people stop believing that they can own a home or that it's even a smart idea, the entire social contract starts to tear, at least in Canada. That's a pretty strong signal that something is definitely off. Now, zoom out. GDP contracted in Q2 2025 down 0.4% quarter over quarter or negative 1.6% annualized. There were 3 straight monthly declines into June. During this period, exports were slammed by tariffs. New investments are chronically weak, and that's straight from StatsCan. Economists can spin it in any different way, but here is the reality. Unemployment is rising, businesses are cautious, and families feel squeezed. Yes, headline inflation cooled, but look at the checkout screen at your grocery store. Look at that rent. Look at the basics. The squeeze is real. So the off feeling is not in your head. It's not about one budget or one rate cut decision. It's that the country doesn't feel like it's moving forward with confidence. It feels stuck because the foundations are shifting. And I wish that were it, but it does get worse. Even if the government fixed housing and the economy tomorrow, there is a bigger problem that doesn't turn on a dime. It's our demographics. In early 2025, population growth flatlined on a quarterly basis, turning effectively zero after years of rapid growth. Birth rates are at a historical low and baby boomers are retiring in huge numbers. These are structural issues. For half a century, Canada's model depended on 2 engines, births and newcomers. The birth engine is stalling while the workforce is rapidly aging. That means the system leans almost entirely on immigration. And that's why how it's done, who arrives, where they settle, and whether they truly join the Canadian project becomes so crucial. Because if that last piece fails, everything else fails. So let's talk about immigration. Canada has been one of the most open countries in the world for decades, and that genuinely was our strength. That's a fact. But in the last 2 years, Canadians are rapidly losing faith in how immigration is being managed in this country. When asked about a 395,000 people target for permanent residence in 2025, 63% said it's too many. Even if you account for sample bias, that's not a fringe view anymore. The root cause is that Canadians are starting to feel like their own culture is getting eroded. And Prime Minister Carney, by continuing on this spree, you are essentially telling the very people that elected you, and yes, there are at least some people in that sample who did vote for you, you are telling them that national sentiment on this topic does not matter. So here is the question for the elected representatives in case you choose to ignore the will of the people. Should a country even exist if it's not going to pass on its values? Canada opened its doors with no questions, no expectations, and no accountability. Politicians act like the only choices are high immigration levels forever or xenophobia. Nonsense. The real choice is managed, value driven integration or chaos. All across the nation, ethnic enclaves are forming. You can spend years in parts of this country and never speak English or French and never interact with Canadian customs. In some cases, imported political conflicts and regressive values are becoming more visible in Canadian society. That is how you break a country. Not by welcoming newcomers, but by refusing to expect the basics from them and supporting them in return to become a part of a shared civic identity. For every person who thinks this is anti immigrant, it's actually pro Canada. It's pro newcomers too. When leaders prioritize numbers over integration, nobody wins. New Canadians deserve a country confident enough to say, here are the values, here is the rules based order, here is the civic culture. Join it, strengthen it, make it your own, and thrive. And who am I to say all of this? Of course, no guesses. I'm an immigrant myself. But that does not necessarily make me a hypocrite for saying these things. As an immigrant, the decision to come here wasn't just better job or nicer weather. From day one, my goal was simple: to become a real Canadian, to contribute, to connect, and to stand for something way bigger than myself, to live up to the values that are held dear in Canada. Rule of law, equal dignity, respect for all, free speech, and democratic accountability, not just in letter but in spirit as well. Do I get it right every day? Of course I do not, but I genuinely try. Canadians need to be convinced once again that immigration adds to our tapestry and not erode from it. So here's what serious leadership would do. And Prime Minister Carney, I haven't seen you or the Liberal Party come through on this yet, but I hope you do. Align population with capacity. If housing starts are at a 30-year low in this country's biggest city, stop pretending that intake targets can keep rising or fall marginally without consequences. Synchronize immigration levels with actual housing and infrastructure delivery. That's common sense. Integration, not just intake. Put real resources into language fluency, credential recognition, civic education, and regional settlement so communities aren't overwhelmed and enclaves don't harden. Integration is not automatic, it is always by design. Rebuild the ownership ladder. Cut approval times, reduce junk fees that kill project viability, and fast-track purpose-built supply, not just pigeonhole condos. If the math doesn't work, nothing gets built. Make the math work again. Compete for productivity. Streamline permits for energy, ports, housing, digital infrastructure. If exports are getting hammered, then build the relationships elsewhere to produce and ship more overseas, not less. The off feeling is real, and it doesn't just flow from economics but identity as well. Do Canadians still share a common we? Are leaders willing to defend civic values out loud? Are newcomers invited and expected to proudly adopt Canadian values that previously made Canada one of the most admired nations in the world? Because if Canada becomes just a place on the map instead of a nation with a purpose, everything else becomes transactional. That's when trust dies. And when trust dies, economies stall, neighborhoods fray, and politics drops to new lows. So we have to choose. Do you want to keep feeding a system that rewards slogans over substance and watch the unraveling continue? Or restore a simple, powerful standard, high expectations, shared values, and honest math about what this country can sustainably build and support? If this resonated with you, share it. Comment with one change, policy or cultural, that would rebuild the sense of belonging in your neighborhood and community. A great country tells the truth, fixes what's broken, and expects the best for and from everyone. Canada can do this, but not by sleepwalking, but by waking up. Thank you so much for watching.